I saw a woman sitting on the street. She had 4 kids running all around her. One didn't have a shirt on, one didn't have shoes on. And I just thought, oh, how does she do it? And she looked utterly exhausted. And then I thought, what if one of her children has the same kind of issues as my son? How's she going to do it? I just could not let it go. I told somebody needs to start a school for these children who don't have housing, because I feel like they're falling through the cracks. And it was actually Boyce Ansley who I named the school after. And she said, yes, you do need to do that. And I said, no, not me. I'm just a stay-at-home mom. I don't know anything about this. And she was like, you could do it. I finally was like, okay, well, I'll just start asking questions. And one thing led to another thing, led to another thing. A lot of doors closed in my face, but I just didn't stop. And we opened a school, which is very successful for children that don't have housing.
Welcome to the podcast where motherhood meets reinvention. I'm your host, Sharon Macey, and this is Mom to More. I'll be speaking with remarkable moms who have embraced the art of transformation, crafting their more by leveraging the skills they hone as stay-at-home moms. They'll share their experiences, struggles, and successes as they return to a former career, pursued a passion or hobby, or charted an entirely new path, giving you the clarity, motivation, and inspiration to help you answer the question, what do you want to do when your kids grow up? Before we jump in, feeling that itch for something more? I've got you. Grab my free guide, 6 Ways to Reinvent Yourself Beyond Motherhood at momtomore.com. It's fast, it's free, and yep, it's in the show notes too. Welcome back. Well, my guest today has an amazing trajectory, and you will soon discover why. Kate Kennedy is a mom, wife, sister, and daughter, and an accomplished visionary and a dreamer of big dreams. Kate began her professional career as a writer-producer for Turner Network Television before transitioning into a role of service and ministry. She is currently minister in community at St. Luke's Episcopal Church in Atlanta, Georgia. Kate holds a BA in communications from Wake Forest University, an MA in religion and public life from Emory University, and is pursuing a Doctor of Ministry degree at Pittsburgh Theological Seminary with a particular focus in creative writing and public theology. What an interesting combination.
Yes.
Sure. Yes. In 2018, Kate founded the Boyce Ansley School for Children Experiencing Homelessness in Atlanta. Her debut memoir, Once Upon a School, chronicles that journey. And no surprise here, folks, Kate was also a stay-at-home mom. So Kate, welcome to the show. I'm so thrilled you're here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It is an honor.
Thank you. I always like to start with what I call my essential mom question, and that is, how many kids do you have and where did you raise them?
I have 4 kids. They all grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. So I am still there. 2 of them are out of college and back here. One is out of college in New York, which is fun.
Yeah.
And then my baby, my one girl, is in college right now. So she's home for the summer, which is nice.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about your mom journey. I think it was very typical for women our age, right? Who dialed it back to raise kids. I'd love to know what that journey looked like for you. I'm guessing you did all the usual mom things, the classic, what I'll call the classic Sam journey, right? Volunteering, making stuff happen. All that stuff is so in your blood.
So I was actually planning to keep working when my first son was born. I just always thought I'll be a working mom. I was a director of youth ministries at a very large church in Atlanta. So that, in case you don't know, that profession does not pay very much. Daycare was going to be more expensive than me staying home with my son. And I just realized I want to stay. I want to be here. I don't want to miss any of this. Yeah. And I know that it was quite the privilege. But it was the best decision for our family. And I do think that is such an important thing for women to realize that, everybody's got their own journey and we really just need to respect each other's choices and their abilities and, what's available to them. And so it was available to me to stay home and I wanted to do it. And so I did. And I did all the things. I volunteered. I was the president. I joke that my children went to the same K through 8 school, all 4 of them. So I was there for 20 years. And I joked that I was there for so long that they forgot that I'd already been president of the PTO, that I was president again later. But I did all the things. I volunteered at my church. I volunteered in the community. But I just loved being with my kids. And,
Right.
it was just a beautiful time. And I think they all appreciated what we had when they were
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then who knows, when they move forward with their families, how what they experience will impact what they ultimately do.
Yes, yes, exactly. And I just wanted to be a good role model. And there's lots of ways to be a good role model,
Yeah.
but this was one way that I could do that. And I think I succeeded in it.
I think
So
you did too. I think you did. So I want to bring up something every stay-at-home mom can relate to, and that would be a crisis of identity. So Kate, stay with me for a moment. I know both you and I felt this during our time raising kids. It's when we try to square who we used to be and who we have become as a stay-at-home mom. And it takes many forms for women of a certain age, right? Our demographic. We were someone before we had kids, but where did she go? And over the years, I've come to realize that this crisis is really a portal because because we're not starting over. We're starting our what's next.
I think that's a beautiful way to put it. I think that I try to think of myself, and I'm not very good at it a lot of times, but I'm working towards it as always becoming, always evolving.
Yeah.
Because once you've fully become and you're fully evolved, then like what's the point? I mean, life is about growth and development, and being working towards being your best self. And I had a terribly hard transition into staying home with my kids. My husband went back to work, and I remember just sitting at home and just crying and saying, like, nothing in his life changed. Like, he goes to work, he comes home, he does the things, and I'm here with the baby all the time. And I don't think anybody understands, like, it can be lonely, and it was a really hard transition. But then finally, I found my groove there, and I did that. And then there was always, I think I would run into women who were working, and it was always a hard conversation. I think women really have a hard time with that decision. And so it's hard for them to talk about it because we all feel some level of guilt. If we stay home, we feel guilty for not working. If we're working, we feel guilty that we're not at home. And I think that's just a female thing, but sometimes we take it out on each other.
That's true.
And so then when my kids were all grown, and I'm just a new empty nester, and people were like, "Oh, what do you do?" And I was so out of habit. "Oh, I'm a mom." "Well, how old are your kids?" "Well, they're 28, 26." It's like,
Yeah.
okay, seriously, what do you do? And so I'm really having to kind of redefine myself again and figure it all out. And it's not an easy journey.
No,
Definitely.
but what's so interesting is so much of how we phrase it really matters.
Yeah.
And you have done so much, and I can't wait to jump into that. But I think depending on what stage we are in life, we rephrase what we are at that moment. And I got this from Neha Rush, who wrote the book, The Power Pause, about leaning into family life. And I remember people saying to me when our kids were younger, "So what do you do?" And I would say, "Oh, I'm just home with the kids." Hard stop, right, to any
Right.
conversation from that. What I should have said was, "Well, right now I have the privilege of leaning into family life, and I'm raising the next generation of humans. What are you doing?" And that really throws it back to someone to say, "Hey, I'm doing something really important, and are you as well?" And at the end, if we need to figure out a title for you, we'll work on that together. Okay.
Yes, we do. We do still.
Okay.
That's a big thing that I write a lot about in my book is not having a title. And
Yeah.
in the world wants you to have a title. And mom is not a title that holds a lot of gravitas in
And it should be.
the professional world. And it should be,
Right.
because you write a job description for a mom who who does
Right.
that?
Oh, it's so impressive. And those skills matter. That's
Yeah.
one thing I like to talk about is that all those skills serve as a foundation of what you will become later
Yes.
in life.
Yeah.
Right. And we use all of those skills. I had a friend once who said, "I learned everything I needed to know about negotiating on real estate deals from negotiating with my 4-year-old."
I believe it, because they can do some. I had my second son; he could do some serious negotiating with me.
And somehow they always manage to win. I'm like, no,
Yes,
no, it can't be
yes.
that way. It
Like,
can't be
wait, how
that
did
way.
that happen?
I know. How did I just give in to a 4-year-old? All
Yes.
right. So as we were just chatting about, raising kids can be difficult, right? Even in the very best circumstances. But to be homeless and raising kids,
Yeah.
when was the moment when you realized you needed to do something to make a difference in your community? And I will add that you fought it and you pulled out every excuse not to do it. So what ultimately won you over?
So as you said in my bio, I started a school for children without housing in Atlanta. And I did that from my stay-at-home mom kind of place. My oldest son had started college, so my kids were a little bit
Older?
older.
Yeah.
And I have one son who he's neurodivergent. He's got a lot of learning disabilities, and it was really difficult for me to, to just be an advocate for him in the school system.
Mm-hmm.
Even with all of our support, all of our safety nets, we could throw a lot of money at it. He went to a really fancy special private school and he had therapy, all of that. And
Right.
it's still, I had to be there with him every step of the way to keep him from falling through the cracks. I think if I hadn't been home and been in the trenches with that every day, all day long, I might not have noticed this need in our community. If I had been coming from a more professional kind of business oriented kind of mind. But I saw a woman on the street, sitting on the street. She looked totally exhausted. She was literally sitting on the curb, and her kids, she had 4 kids running all around her in different states of duress. I think one didn't have a shirt on, one didn't have shoes on. And I just thought, oh, how does she do it? I'm exhausted. And, how does she do this? She looked utterly exhausted. And then I thought, what if one of her children has the same kind of issues as my son? How in the world how's this
How
going
does
to
she deal
happen?
with it?
How is
Recognize it, deal with it. Yeah,
right?
advocate for them.
Yeah, how's she going to do it? And so because, generational poverty is a tremendous problem in our country that I think people don't think about. If you are born in poverty and you don't have all the opportunities and the entrees and the, all of the privileges that we get just by going to good schools and, knowing people who are in the working world, it's hard to break into that. And you need somebody to be there to give you a space. And so I just couldn't let it go. I just could not let it go. And I did not want to do it. I told somebody needs to start a school for these children who don't have housing because I feel like they're falling through the cracks. And it was actually Boyce Ansley who I named the school after. And she said, yes, you do need to do that. And I said, no, not me. So just
Somebody else.
somebody needs, not me. I don't know anything about education. Like I'm just a stay-at-home mom. I don't know anything about this. And she was like, you could do it. If anybody could do it, you could do it. And she just kept tapping at me until I finally was like, okay, well, I'll just start asking questions. And one thing led to another thing, and I asked a lot of questions and got a lot of doors closed in my face, but I just didn't stop. And we opened a school, which is very successful for children that don't have housing.
Which is extraordinary. Hey, Kate, we're going to take a quick break. And when we return, we're going to dive into your book and we're also going to dive into your mom skills. So don't go away. And now a quick word from my sponsor, Ally Shoes. I got to tell you, these are some of the most comfortable shoes I have ever worn. They're designed by women, for women, like finally, right? And engineered with perfectly placed padding. So I can literally wear these all day. And I cannot say that for other brands I've worn. And I'm not the only one giving positive reviews. InStyle, Business Insider, and CNN are all saying the same thing. Oh, and they have a really cool origin story as well. So flats, heels, boots, you name it, they have it. Ally is letting me share the love with all of you. Head on over to Ally, that's ALLY.NYC, where new customers and listeners of the pod will get $40 off your first pair of heels. All their heels, like Classic, Kitten, Bold Block, Sexy Slingbacks, with special code MOMTOMORE40, and 10% off your first pair of boots and flats, so 10% off of each, with special code MOMTOMORE10. Ally is reimagining how comfort and function support women every day, and I love that. Thanks to Ally for sponsoring this episode. Okay, Kate, you are starting a business, but you still had kids and laundry and everyday mom life. And as you just said before, you were sort of fighting it all along the way, like, no, it needs to happen, but am I really the person to do it?
Yeah.
How did you manage all that before the school actually opened?
You know, I had a lot of guilt with that. And I really struggled a lot because I felt like, and I think that I thought my husband felt like this too, and my kids felt like this too. And I think probably I felt it more than they did, but they felt it a little bit, that I had just gone out and changed the rules of our family life. Dinner used to be ready at night. I mean, not gourmet, but something was ready every night. And now a lot of times it wasn't. I was, I just wasn't there. I wasn't there. I wasn't doing, I was, behind on the laundry. Just, everybody needed to pitch in a different way. And they were super proud of what I was doing and very excited. But I think there was this underlying, wait, mom's changed all the rules and it's making it a lot harder for us. My husband included.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was really difficult. My goal was never to be running a school. I'm not an educator. I do now, but I didn't then know very much about, like the science of reading and how to run a school. My goal was to get something up and open and then have people, that were specialists in the field running the school. And I could be out in the community talking about it and raising the money and all that kind of stuff. But that wasn't an everyday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. job. But that was not the reality of what happens when you open up a fledgling nonprofit. You don't have any money only the founder's willing to work 100 hours a week for free.
For free, exactly.
And that was me. So I did. Yeah.
Okay. Before we hop into the book, let's talk about mom skills, because clearly you have a ton of skills that you honed while raising your kids, and then merging all of those into starting the school and this movement, which is extraordinary. And motherhood offers an extraordinary number of transferable skills.
I always tell people that my superpower is that I can get things done. And I think that was tremendously tested in staying home and having 4 young kids and a husband that, traveled a lot and worked a lot. And I get stuff done. And so I think that I honed that skill when I stayed home with my kids. And then definitely that came into great use when I was opening a business. I think that just being able to expect the unexpected and deal with the emergencies and the crises. And, when you're home with your kids, you kind of never know what's going to happen day to day.
Right.
You just never know because they're kids and they do their thing. And, that was very true with the families at the school too. When you don't have housing, you live crisis to crisis to crisis. So I was really able to kind of lean into that with them because I had been home with my kids in the trenches with them for so many years.
Right. And did your kids get involved in the school in any way?
They did. They were so excited and they talked to their friends about it, and they got my niece got me an invitation to come speak at her school, and it's just been it's been really cool to see them like really lean into this as well. It's funny, my oldest son, when he went to college, and he was in college for this whole time, he had taken me off his Instagram. He was like, Mom, I'm in college now. You don't need to follow me on Instagram.
This is not cool. Yeah.
Right. I'm like, okay, whatever, you're in college. And he did. And it wasn't until his girlfriend said, your son posted the nicest thing on Instagram about your school. And I'm like, he did? And so she showed it to me, and I was like, that's so...
And you didn't even know.
No, and how proud he was of his mom and how great the school was, and donate to the school and all that kind of stuff. And it was just incredible.
Yeah. You know that they're going to be proud. They saw the hard work that you put into it.
Yes.
And then what transpired. So let's talk about your book. Here it is, Once Upon a School. Kate, I got to tell you, it is such an extraordinary read. It read like a novel. It's a powerful, heartfelt read. It is raw. It is beyond inspiring. It explores racial inequality, generational poverty, the power of community, and resilience in a huge way. Totally held my attention. I just was like, every chapter, I just couldn't wait to move on to the next chapter. And I got to tell you, I was viscerally feeling your desire to do the right thing from reading this book and change the trajectory of these kids and their families' lives while learning how much you didn't really know. So, I mean, really, what a humbling experience, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I also will admit I love the quotes that you had at the beginning of every chapter, and I'll share with you one of my favorite quotes, which was not at the beginning of a chapter. It was actually in one of the chapters, and it was from a gentleman named Bob Goff,
Oh.
who was called a recovered lawyer, which is hysterical. My husband's that too, and a writer. And he wrote, this is so powerful. He said, quote, "We don't need to do what we're merely capable of doing. The trick is to figure out what we were made to do."
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
Yes. Well, as I said earlier, my superpower is getting things done. And so you put a problem out for me and I can pretty much solve it. I can just figure it out. That's just what I do. But every problem I've learned is not for me to solve. Every crisis is not for me to attend to. Every need is not for me to try to fill. Because when that's your core, you feel like I'm able to do it, so I should. But that will eat you up very, very quickly. I'm a big fan of the Enneagram. I don't know if you're familiar with the Enneagram, but it's a personality typing. It's very ancient.
Okay.
You can look it up. I talk about it a lot in my book, but it's 9 different personality types, and I'm a 3. And I love it. So the 3 is the achiever. And I love it so much because it says, that's my core. And if I use that gift well, it benefits me and it benefits the world. If I use it in a really dangerous way or in an unhealthy way, then it tears me down and it tears down the world. And, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And so for me, that quote means a lot because I feel like there's a lot of things that I can do that just aren't mine to do.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And to be able to figure that out. Talk to me about some of the obviously challenges, in starting this school, some of your like the highest highs and the lowest lows.
Yes. Well, I mean, just the fact that we opened the school, I mean, I can still remember the first day of school when we opened the doors and the kids were there, like ready. And they wore uniforms,
Crazy.
so
Yeah.
cute, and they had backpacks and they were there. And then the next day they came back. And then the next day they came back. And I was like, wow, wow, like it's this
Wow.
really
Yeah. Just wow. Yeah.
yeah. And so that was amazing. But then we always had, struggles. I mean, the families were living crisis to crisis, and each of their crises was like a crisis of my own. And that was just so difficult. And then it's hard to found a nonprofit. It's just really hard work. And it wasn't what I expected, so it got really kind of dicey. And I ended up having to walk away. And I think that was the most difficult thing I probably have ever done in my whole life. But, maybe it was mine to build, but it wasn't mine to run forever.
I can appreciate that. You began the legacy and now you sort of pass the baton.
Right.
Right.
To an
To
actual
somebody else.
educator who
Yeah.
knows how to run a school. And they have money now to pay somebody. So,
Nice.
that's great.
You had the school and then you wrote the book.
Right.
What did you learn about Kate in doing all of this?
A lot. A lot. It's been a real journey for me. And I think going back to the stay-at-home mom thing, when I first started this journey and telling people what I wanted to do, I mean, I have a whole story in the book about how I met with a woman and I told her, and I had a budget and a strategic plan and like everything that I needed. And she was like, "What's your title? Like, what do you do?" And I was like, I'm just a concerned citizen.
Oh, I remember that. Yes.
And she said, "Oh, I think you're in over your head." And that was that.
We need titles.
We need titles.
Because that's the world.
We need a title, but every title, I felt like an imposter. And then I had people telling me I was an imposter. I had one gentleman say to me, "Look, I have an MBA from Harvard, and you seem to think you know what you're doing. But again, I have an MBA from Harvard." And I was
excuse me. Yeah.
I was like, "Oh yeah, whatever you think must be the smartest way." Well, his way was not the way. I knew what I was doing. I mean, I was having success all around me. But it was really it was really challenging for me to figure out who I was and my
Right.
worth. Because again, I'm just a stay-at-home mom.
Right. First of all, we have to get rid of the word just.
Right, exactly.
I was a stay-at-home mom, proud, because first of all, as a stay-at-home mom, you're never home.
Right.
So yeah.
Yes.
And
I don't want to have to call it something like people call it, I was CEO of the household. And for me, just I want to claim what I did. I was raising tiny humans.
exactly.
And that's really important.
Yeah. Raising the next generation of humans.
Yeah.
For sure. So in the book, you had an anecdote about the color of the shirts that the kids were wearing.
Yes.
Tell my listeners about that, because that was really interesting, a perspective that you didn't have before.
That was such a turning point. And I always say now, I started saying this when I was at the school, and I really always embrace it now. You don't know what you don't know. And that doesn't mean you were wrong or your heart was not in the right place. It just meant you didn't know. I think it's Maya Angelou that says, do what you know, and when you know better, do better. So that is exactly what happened with the shirts. So we had them in uniforms because we thought that would be, helpful to the kids, and we provided them for free. And the shirts were blue, light blue, and the shorts and skirts were navy blue. And so after the first, and they had the little logo and embroidered on them, they were so cute. And after the first quarter, we had a parent meeting, and the parents were kind of like, "You want to meet with us?" Because the first thing I didn't really think about is when you are unhoused and you are taking your child to a public school, you don't really have a voice. You're embarrassed. You don't, because you don't want to be found out. And a lot of them don't want to be found out because they're scared that they'll get turned over for defects for not having stable housing, which is the Department of Family and Children's Services, and their children will be taken away. But we had a meeting, and the parents all came, and they really formed a little community because they were all in the same position. And we said, what could we do better as we move forward? And they all looked at us like, are you kidding? Like, what? I'm not going to say anything. I don't want you to kick me out of here. And we're like, no, really, what could we do better? And finally, one mom said, the shirts are really difficult. We had originally picked white. We had picked white because we thought that they could bleach the stains out and the shirts would last longer. What I didn't know was that if you're in a shelter, you don't have, or you're living on the streets, which we had, you don't have access to washing machines. You don't have access to bleach. That's not a thing. So the shirts were just getting dirtier and dirtier. And they wanted to switch to navy shirts, and because it would hide the stains. And we were like, well, that makes perfect sense. And so we did. When the navy shirts came in and we handed them out, the parents were like, wait, you listen to us? You care what we say? Like, you weren't just joking? And it was a real turning point in the school, I think, because the parents were like, wow, we really have a voice here. Like, we're really a team. And that was really special. Yeah.
How nice. I just, especially for people who are living under such hardship, to be able to realize that they matter and that their words and thoughts and their ideas matter. How beautiful is that, Kate?
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted the school to be a place where everybody felt their own worth and dignity. I really tried to say, teach me what I don't know. Like, and I want to teach you what you don't know, and let's work together. Let's be a team. And we are.
That's so beautiful. So your school went from kindergarten through.
So we started with a pre-K, and the plan was to add one grade every year. We were just very, very slow and go through middle school. So this year, the 9 kids that are still at the school who started in pre-K in 2018 graduated from the 5th grade and will be the first class of our first middle school 6th grade next year.
I love that it's expanding.
It's so exciting. And there's a school right across the street, Cristo Rey, which is a Catholic school that has lots of schools around the country, but they serve underserved children, and they send them to college. If you go to a Cristo Rey school and you want to go to college, you will. And so we have a partnership that our children will matriculate to Cristo Rey if they would like when they graduate.
And these kids have aspirations, right? Really? I know we've probably talked to the kids a lot. What are some of their aspirations?
Oh, yes. They want to be everything. They want to be doctors, and they want to be lawyers, and they want to be engineers. And I mean, they have no thoughts that they're not going to gonna go to college. They're
Or
not
that they
gonna
can't.
do
Right.
all
Yeah.
the things. Like the world is kind of more open to them than it was before. There's a family that I talk about extensively in the book, the Stinson family, and
Mhm.
I'm very close to them, and they have 9 children. And I know, married couple without housing, 9 their story is in the book. It's absolutely incredible. But they're twins. Their youngest were the only ones that came to the Ansley School because it was where we had grades for them.
Mhm.
And but one of their older children graduated from high school this year, and the mom said she's been watching her younger siblings talk about their futures, and she wants to join the army so she can serve a couple of years, and then she wants to go to be at school to be an ultrasound tech.
Mhm.
And you know, she's got aspirations,
Yeah.
whereas their family has never gone to college, never done any post. Most of them a lot of them didn't graduate from high school. Like they've homelessness to homelessness to homelessness.
And I love how it had filtered up,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
From the younger kids to the older kids, realizing your life doesn't have to be this way. And
Right.
it's going to take a lot of fighting and clawing to get to where you
Yes.
envision
Yeah.
yourself to be, but it's possible. And I think that's the same lesson for any mom who's like, okay, where am I going after this? Right?
Right.
Because we know we're not done when we become empty nesters. And it's not going to be easy. Nothing in life that is worth it is easy.
Right.
But you just have to, and the tenacity that you had to put one foot in front of the other, despite all of the challenges that you had once the school opened and the diversity of opinions. You should be doing this, you should be doing that. It's all in the book, folks. It's really an extraordinary read,
Oh, thank you.
and all that you've learned about the power within Kate
Mm-hmm.
during this time blew me
Yes.
away. And
Yes.
apparently someone said in the book that is like your mom was like that, and that's who
Yes.
you are, and that
Yes.
nobody was surprised that you would do this because you were like your mom's daughter.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And it's so exciting because now actually I've my 3 sons are all in the financial world,
Mhm.
which is where my husband spends his time. That's his expertise. But my daughter is studying to be a counselor and a child life specialist, and she's working
Yeah.
anyway. She's and so it just makes me so happy to see my kids like really take this passion and do their own things with it.
Yeah,
Just
that's so powerful.
which is
All right, so
thrilling.
for everyone listening,
Yeah.
people who have spotted an injustice,
Mhm.
how can people foster change in their own communities?
There's a lot of different ways to do this. I think I look at it as like top down to bottom up. And there's a
Mhm.
lot of people out there who are fighting the institutions, fighting like really protesting. And that is all great work. That is not,
Mhm.
again, my work to do right now.
Right.
I am more of a kind of a bottom up kind of person, which means I started this journey by just noticing one woman. And then I talked to one
Mhm.
woman, and then I talked to some kids, and then I talked to another woman. I started it by building relationships with
Yeah.
with people that I thought, really felt worthless and were really slipping through the cracks. And the privilege that I had, and I was able to, share that and use that to help them, find a new path for themselves. So I think just talking to people. I mean, a lot, you don't know what you don't know again. If you see someone who's struggling, why are you struggling? Like, what's keeping you
Mhm.
down? What is the roadblock? Is there something I can do, to help fix this for you and everybody else who's having the same problem? Because
Right.
no problem is just singular for one person.
Right. Right. And
So
I'm sure you don't wake up one day and go, "Oh, I'm going to be the founder of a nonprofit,"
no,
because that's one of the, aside from being a stay-at-home mom, that's one of the
yes,
hardest jobs on the planet as well.
yes.
Yeah.
And I do think there's people that do that. And I will say, I think that can be a great roadblock for people when they say, I'm going to be the founder of a nonprofit, and they anxiously search for a nonprofit to start. And they don't start with, I'm going to, I see a need in the community.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're just trying to push a square peg into a round hole because you want to start a nonprofit.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, because
I
it's
think it needs,
not
just
easy.
like you, it needs to start with someone sitting on the curb,
Yeah.
clearly having difficulty, and then finding out how you could make it better for them.
Yeah, because the first thing you do is say, is there someone in the community that's already doing something that could help alleviate the situation?
Right.
And if so, then you need to help do that.
Yeah.
And if not, then maybe it's time to look at starting something. And that
There
was
you
kind
go.
of where I fell into it. Yeah.
I love that. It's such a great story, Kate. Really is. Kate, I want to ask you, you are a minister. So talk to me about that, because that seems like such a natural next step, given what you did with the school and so inherent to who you are.
Yes. And I think the school, the school was such a ministry for me. I've always been very, very religious, very faithful. And I had, already gotten a couple of degrees, and it's always been a big part of my life. So I'm finding new ways to formalize that and cement that. And like you said, I'm getting my doctorate right now in creative writing and public theology, which in public theology is standing in the gap between the church and the world. How do we find God in the world? We all use different language for God, but for the most part, it's there. God is there. We just all have different language. And sometimes the church makes the mistake of thinking that it's God, and then it makes mistakes because the church is really just a bunch of humans seeking God. So public theology kind of calls everybody to the table.
So interesting. I look forward to following your trajectory there and hearing some of your sermons online. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, all my sermons are on my websites.
Unfortunately, our time is drawing to a close, but I have a question that I ask all of the incredible moms I interview, and that is this. Since this is the Mom to More podcast, Kate Kennedy, what is your more?
Goodness. My more is right now, this is new for me, and it's my word for the year, is just to be. Because I learned through starting the school that who I am is good and enough, and who I am just on a regular day does a lot of good stuff in the world. So I don't need to strive to do more. I can just be, and it will all be okay. It will all be good.
I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And please tell our listeners where they can find you online. Folks, everything is going to be in the show notes, where they can buy your book.
Yes.
Tell us all.
Yes. So I have a website, KateKennedyWrites.com. And on there is all the information. You can get in touch with me. I love to talk to people if you want to reach out. If you're thinking about starting something, or you have a need in your community, or, and want some advice, I'd love to do that. And my book is available all the online places, several independent bookstores. You can get it at Amazon, barnesandnoble.com. And my favorite website to point out is bookshop.org, which is an amazing nonprofit website. They support independent booksellers. So you can order your book from there, and you can say what independent bookstore in your neighborhood you'd like the money to go to. And
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And then on Instagram, you are?
On Instagram, I am Kate Kennedy Writes, at Kate Kennedy Writes.
Terrific. Kate, thank you again for your time. Your story is so extraordinary. I'm so grateful that you shared it with our listeners. The book, an incredible read, folks. I highly recommend, if you want to be inspired, get this book, because it's gonna knock your socks off.
Thank you. And thank you for what you do.
I'd like to read another 5-star review. And this is from Sapna Rad. And she wrote, as I move into the next chapter of my life, this podcast has been a lifesaver, a must listen for moms. Well, thank you so much for your kind words. And if you keep writing those 5-star reviews, I'll keep reading them. Before I sign off, a quick favor. Following the Mom to More pod means you'll never miss an episode, and it really helps the show to grow. And if you'd be willing to leave a 5-star rating and review and share an episode with another mom, I'd be super grateful and appreciate your support.